Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011, he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
A very, very, very good evening. Sunday the 21st of January 2024. My name is Raja Miah. Good evening, Raymond. Thank you. At least you got on there. So some housekeeping first. And I won't get angry with you. I'm just laughing. When I try and get ready for these things, there's probably about an hour beforehand when I've got to go through stuff and go through stuff and go through stuff, so it's as seamless and as coherent as possible. I genuinely don't just turn on and just off we go. Now the links, I don't know what's gone on. I really don't know what's gone on. I think I mentioned, and in fact I did mention last week, that there was no more emails going out because people were just sharing the emails, and what I was going to do was just put the link on. I know people can still share the link, but I set up a special page on the web page, and that special page is here. I'll put it up here. There you go. So on the web page, you've got this something called transmissions at the top, okay? And Recusant 9 transmissions comes up. You see transmissions, and I'm signed in here. So I'm signed in, and every week what will happen is the first post at the top will have the link to the transmission. So all you do is you go down here, you sign in. Now if you can't sign in, that's not up to me. You'll either not have subscribed or your subscription's cancelled. All of that's automatic. I don't know why it's took you 50 times, Julie. Sorry, I'm just reading. And you go down here and it says that you just press play on that. That should work. And if it doesn't work, then you see in the I can't do it with my hand, in the top right hand corner you can see an arrow. You can just copy the link there. I'm sure people will just copy the link and pass it on to their friends, which is fine. You know, we are where we are with it. But I stopped emailing because also with the emails, people were sending me messages saying I've not got the emails. And I'd be like, have you checked your junk? Oh yeah, it's there. No, it's not in my junk. So I'd go and check in the back end of my system, which takes me a little bit of time. And someone, you know, you've unsubscribed to the emails. So I'm like, there's a reason you've not got the email. It's because you've unsubscribed to the emails. I think Marlene is still trying to get on. So if someone knows Marlene, Gary, if someone can just get in touch with Marlene and get her on. And, well, I don't know why it didn't work, Nikki, because that's how it's meant to work. I'm just going to go and get a drink, okay, and compose myself. And if there's people that need to get on, I'm sure there'll be something on the chat or something somewhere or an email. Just get in touch and I'll come back with a drink and we'll start the transmission, okay? Chat amongst yourselves. You don't have to buy me a brew, Gary. It's no bother. I'm just there. I just didn't understand it, and it's muddled me a little bit, if I'm honest with you, for this evening. So that's what's happened for me. Let me just check. Yeah, Marlene, if you can see Marlene, is she on? Just perfect, thank you. Because she just said the link had expired that I sent her. And I'm like thinking, how can the link have expired? I've just, it was the last person I sent it to. Amanda's on, and Raymond Beeves on. So I'm like thinking, yeah, I've sent them the same link. I just copied the same link to all three people. Oh, okay. This is where we're up to with this. And it's entirely up to you. Really, it is entirely up to you. Because it's, for me, it makes very little difference, I think, if I'm honest with you. My subscriptions were going down. You all know my subscriptions were going down. And since I've done this, I'll just bring it up on my computer so I can give it something accurate. I was at one point, I was at the best part of £1,200 a month. And it went down to just under 800. And now it's at £866 plus the whatever the YouTube comes in. So it's at, say, give or take, it's at £900. And it's gone up. I'll be honest with you, it's gone up since we went behind a firewall. A paywall, whatever the phrase is. And it's not something I want to do. If I'm honest with you, it's not something I want to do. But there's two reasons. One is I needed a minimum income of some form. And it wasn't the minimum income, if I'm honest with you. I was genuinely pissed off with how we'd ended up where we'd ended up. Where these scumbags, these freeloaders, not you lot, these freeloaders, the politicians, the big teams and all of those, were just copying my stuff, taking my stuff, and then attacking me. I mean, I saw someone shared with me even today. I'd put a piece together. I shared it as an emergency transmission, and I wrote it all up and I shared it as a post on Medium and on Redwall. Not behind a paywall, so it was completely free, the Medium stuff, to read. But it took me like 2 days to put together, and that was of like 20 days of thinking about it. And then I think someone mentioned that Paul Eric has just lifted it and twisted it, and it's all right. If I'd got somewhere near minimum wage, it'd be all right. But I'm nowhere near. So that's where I'm stuck. And then I also know, because I've been speaking to friends of mine who are counsellors, who pay me, who support me, who are on here, who are like, well, we need you for the election. And I get that. I'm under no illusions what value I bring. So it's entirely up to you lot. Have a think about it, because this, I can carry on behind the paywall and mess around, and you can't get in here, you can't get in there, and I think that's what it is, Jack. I think it's as simple as that. Because the platforms I use, like YouTube, I mean, the links went out with YouTube, and YouTube sent links out to billions of people. And the Ghost platform, people use it. Big companies use it for newsletter, blogging companies use it. So I'm not sure what you want or what you think. It's not even what you want, what you think. Because I'm looking in front of me at the names here, and it starts with I've got Julie at the top, Lynn, Gary, Nicky. I've got a little screen of just the last 4 or 5 posts, Jack. And I know you'll all pay, and you do pay no matter what, and you do support me no matter what. But there's also something I think it's unfair on all you lot. I don't think any of you will just, I look at, when we put it all out free to air, none of you stopped. You all carried on supporting me. And I had a conversation. Sorry, Jack, I'm not picking on you. I remember I had a conversation with you many months ago. And you said money was tight, and I said, fine, don't worry. Is it Dolly who comes up here from Royton? She got in touch. I just sent her a complimentary subscription. I've done that to a few people. It's entirely up to you. If you want me to just go free, I'll just go free. And put, and not bother behind a paywall. It's the, I don't think it's the money. I'll get by. We've got by this far, haven't we? We've got this far. So I don't think it's the money. I think and I'm just being honest with you, I think what hurt the most and what continues to hurt the most is how all these other people who've done very well out of me and then stamped all over me still come back and steal my work. So before we start, let's have this conversation. If I knew how to do it, I'd do it now. I'd put up a what's it called? Not a petition, like a poll. Go and have a look, Ian. Go and I'm banned on their pages, so I can't see their pages. I think it was Kel. I think it was one of the team on the Rabble chat posted it this morning. Gary shared something with me earlier in the week, or if something I'd written had been, what do you say, Gary, lifted word for word by someone. Gary asked me how I felt about it. I just shrugged my shoulders. No, it's not it's worse than plagiarism, Denise. It is worse than plagiarism. Evening, Evan. How are you? What are you drinking? I mean, it's 75 pence a week, Julie. 75 pence a week, and when we put it out for free, and I ask for people to support me and buy me a coffee, and then I look at the ones who have bought me a coffee, and it's all you lot as well. So that makes me feel even more guilty. I'm thinking the ones who are supporting me are double supporting me or triple supporting me. And I find that uncomfortable. It's just crazy, isn't it, mate? It's absolutely crazy. I mean, this is a multimillionaire. I didn't send the link out, Evan. Sorry, mate. It was just on the transmissions. It's just on the transmissions. That's the word. That's the word, Tony. I'm having that word. That's the word. Parasites. That's indeed the word. Now, bear in mind, those of you who came to court with me, by the way, and you had a date in your diary for the 3rd and the 4th, or the 4th and the 5th of May, remember? They've sent me something to say it's the 21st of February for one day, rather than the 2 days it was. So my solicitor's chasing that, and hopefully we'll make some sense out of that. And I'll let you all know next week what we're up to. And you see, Denise, that really doesn't bother me, because I'm not bright. I'm all right, but I'm not, My issue isn't that. My issue is everyone has a role and has a value, and brings something to it. And we're all better working together and stronger. But you can see what's gone on. It's not that. These people want to be in charge. And I'm happy for them to be in charge. If someone came back to me and said, Raja, this is the framework we're all going to operate, and this is your role, and this is why, and it works, and you can sit me down and say, this is how it'll work, You know, I'm a team player. I'll be fair. But the thing, Nick, and you've seen it, Nick. I see, I follow you on Twitter, and I see your exasperation, mate, with everything that's happened to you. And hopefully, when I get into a position of power, I can help you, and I will help you. It's not that. You can see with the way I do things how much, mate, it takes hours and hours and hours every day and every night. I work on this all the time. I pull the strands together the way I do because it's what I do all the time. Let's move on to the transmission. So have a think. Have a think. Because what I don't want to do is get you guys exasperated. I know Denise got exasperated. Marlene, someone else, Amanda, couldn't log on. And it'd be easier just to put a link out and say, there you go. I mean, I'm looking at the screen on the left and I've got 56 of you, 57 of you. I'll tell you how many watched Friday's emergency transmission. Just give me a second, I'll bring it up on my phone. $789. 789. Okay. Let's do this. I have here, what I've done was the press conference on Monday. I've chopped it down to 20 minutes, 19 minutes and 5. I think it went on for an hour and a half of key bits of information sequentially, and I'm going to play bits at a time, full screen, pause it, and give you some analysis or commentary, and we'll work our way through. Okay? Indeed, not bad for a man no one listens to. So, here we go.
Good morning, everybody. I would like to thank you all for coming in this morning. Back in 2017, shortly after I was first elected, the BBC documentary, The Three Girls, was first broadcast, and it was followed by The Betrayed Girls, the documentary. It prompted a public debate about child sexual exploitation in Greater Manchester, and specifically the making of a serious allegation that lessons from the tragic death of Victoria Agolia in Manchester in 2003 and the failure of Operation Augusta in Manchester were not learned by GMP, and that this led several years later to similar failures in Rochdale.
Okay. So what is confirmed is, and it's important, what is confirmed is that the allegation was that the collapse of Operation Augusta and the death of Victoria Agolia the consequence of that and the lack of lessons being learnt from that, there's a direct correlation, all the way, direct correlation to what happened in Rochdale and the grooming gangster. So that's how it started, his work, yeah? That was a serious allegation. Because they failed in 2003, as a consequence of those failures and the lessons not being learnt, did what happened in Rochdale happen. Now, of course, what we came along and did was scupper what he was doing and had him force Andy Burnham to put Oldham in there. So if the lessons had not been learnt in Manchester, had they been, as a consequence of that, is that why Rochdale took place? And what we're saying is before Rochdale, there was something called Oldham. Now, we forced that. We forced that on him. And it's been proven now. Manchester, Oldham, Rochdale. The sequence. Okay? So that was a serious allegation. And that serious allegation has been confirmed to be factual. The failure of the statutory agencies, in particular Greater Manchester Police and the councils, yeah. And the failure to learn lessons in Manchester and the cover-up in Manchester, which is confirmed as a cover-up, because that's what Part 1 confirmed. 97 child sex offenders were left free to roam the streets of Manchester. The minutes of the meeting were lost, all of that. Victoria's diary disappeared and then it reappeared. So, it's proven it was a cover-up. And Oldham proved that lessons had not been learnt. And now this is Rochdale afterwards. Okay? Important. Carry on.
Led me to establish this wide-ranging review, and the report being published today finds unequivocally that failures that could and should have been avoided were in fact repeated. It led me to establish this wide-ranging review, and the report being published today finds unequivocally that failures that could and should have been avoided were in fact repeated. In the words of the report, it represents a, quote, lamentable strategic failure by leaders in the Greater Manchester system at the time. Over many years, Greater Manchester Police failed to give the investigation of these serious crimes the priority and resources necessary. The report is hard to read. It gives a detailed and distressing account of how so many young women were seriously harmed and appallingly failed.
Okay, I take offence to Andy Burnham there. I genuinely take offence to Andy Burnham there. Because he's reading something that's prepared for him, yeah? And someone would have checked that and double-checked that. He uses the term young women. These were children. Young women are what I see out on a Saturday night, perhaps, when I'm in Manchester. That's what I would describe as young women. These were children. These were children, and the terminology was not an accident. The terminology was intentional. Every word that he's reading will have been checked and double-checked before it's put in front of him to read. And he hasn't apologised for using the term young women. But they're not young women. They are children. So right at the beginning, they're trying to manage this. Right from the offset, they're trying to manage this.
But it does fulfill the central purpose of why I set up this review in the first place. It is only by facing up fully and unflinchingly to what happened in all of its horrifying detail that we can be sure of bringing about the whole system culture change that is necessary on this critically important issue.
Okay. What he's saying, first of all, he wants a pat on the back. Because he's done his job in confirming what we already knew was true. So he wants a pat on the back by confirming what we already knew. We didn't want him to confirm what we knew to be as true. What we wanted our mayor to do was do something about it. Or have I got that wrong? What we wanted of our leaders to do was to not just own it, and they haven't owned it, by the way. We wanted them to say, as a direct consequence of this, this is what we're now going to do, and these are the people who have been held accountable. And he talks about system-wide changes. That means it's all gone wrong. It's all gone wrong. So he's admitting to it having all gone wrong. You know, the police use the terminology, a few rotten apples or whatever, yeah? What he's admitting to here isn't a few rotten apples. The entire orchard, everything has gone wrong. That's what he's saying. And it's took him to get to this point from 17? 6 years. It's took him over 6 years.
It is important to make clear that the events described in this report took place over 10 years ago and that things have changed in that time.
Okay. He's saying this is about something that happened over 10 years ago, so it goes up to 2012 or something, and things have changed in that time. He is a manipulator, an outright manipulator, and I'll tell you why. If things have changed in that time, the only way you would know that things have changed in that time is that if your review continued up to the current day. You cannot make that claim that things have changed in that time without having tested to see if things have changed. Can you? And of course, later on, Maggie Oliver stands up and says nothing's changed. In the big picture things of everything that, they were still concerned about is still happening today. So what does he state as his evidence as things have changed?
Ofsted inspections have found the way children at risk of sexual exploitation are protected by Rochdale's children's services has improved. And I am
Okay. He's claimed Ofsted have said things have improved. Raja Miah does what Raja Miah does. Ofsted file, Children's Services for Rochdale, 23rd of January to the 3rd of February 2023. Five criteria. Ofsted inspections are inadequate, requires improvement, good, and outstanding. Yeah. The impact of leaders on social work practice with children and families requires improvement. The experiences and progress of children who need help and protection. The experiences and progress of children who need help and protection requires improvement. The experience and progress of children in care requires improvement. The experience and progress of care leavers requires improvement. Overall effectiveness requires improvement. That's 2013. The one before that, so that was 2023. The one before that is in 2018. They had one that was good there. So they've actually gone backwards. They've actually gone backwards. So Andy Burnham referencing Ofsted to quantify the progress. When Ofsted is clearly saying, and I'll bring up the most recent one up again. Ofsted, as you can see, is clearly saying requires improvement across all of the judgment areas. And I know I'm not a Burnham fan, but I tried to be fair on this. And I found it completely unacceptable. I found it unacceptable that he referred to the children as young women. I found it completely unacceptable that he determined success as finally for himself being told what we've all been telling him for a decade. Well, since we've been saying for a decade at least. And I found it completely unacceptable that he cross-references Ofsted when the most recent Ofsted judgment in Rochdale is it requires improvement. So that's where it started. And then, of course, the posh policeman comes along.
I'm especially grateful to Maggie and her foundation, who against an agreed protocol with GMP now meet with senior public protection officers on a monthly basis to discuss all specific referrals that come through her foundation. This is an essential element in making sure that no child should ever fall through the cracks again, and provides an invaluable safety net and bolsters our contemporary practices and multi-agency arrangements. I do think it important to draw a distinction between then and the way that CSE is now dealt with by the police and our partner agencies.
Draw a line, a distinction between then and now. And he's trying to talk up Maggie Oliver and say, the police work closely with Maggie Oliver's foundation. So this is a pre-prepared speech. And what you need to understand is that Maggie Oliver also had a pre-prepared speech. And extracts from everyone's pre-prepared speech was shared in a press release to the BBC and so on before even this press conference took place, because they wanted to manage it. So here he is, Watson, Chief Constable, trying to say, we're working so much better now, we work closely with the foundation, and the world now is not the world it was before. Lessons have been learned, and here we have him say it again.
Lessons from our past have been well and truly learned, and they are solidly baked into today's practice. GMP's strategic approach to CSE is now effectively governed. This governance encompasses all aspects of training, professional practice and development, as well as practical case management. In short, I am confident that GMP and our partners now have the capacity and the capability to meet the highest of standards sustainably and to dynamically adopt different approaches where necessary to reflect further organizational learning, amendments to national best practice, and to pivot very quickly to recover.
Okay, someone wrote that bullshit for him, right? It's like bullshit bingo. Pivot, this, that. Operation Sherwood is the one to measure it on. If lessons have been learned between part 1 of the review and part 3 of the review, which is this, it is what happened at part 2 of the review. And part 2 of the review was Oldham, and they grudgingly launched something called Operation Sherwood. Operation Sherwood, to date, has charged, 0 people? They've not told any of us they've charged anyone. Every now and then they'll be out with the Oldham Times arresting people, but you don't hear of anyone being charged. They've definitely not prosecuted anyone. They're not pivoting very well, are they? And if you want to go back to the 97 from 2003 in Operation Augusta, the 97 that they knew about, when they shut down the investigation that no one can find the minutes of the meeting to see who approved it being shut down. Oh, there's 97 child sex offenders out there, lads, that we know about. We've got the names and addresses. Well, let's just close the investigation down. Well, how many of those 97 have you got and arrested? Or have you lost that paperwork as well?
Situations when we get things wrong. The GMP that I lead will pursue all reasonable lines of inquiry relentlessly and without fear or favour.
Rochdale has overhauled.
Okay, so his GMP will act without fear or favour. That's an outright lie. And we know that's an outright lie because of our experiences in Oldham, where they most definitely operate with fear and favour. Who blew up Arooj Shah's car? The day after this press conference, he's photographed next to Arooj Shah in the morning on some nonsense Operation Avro. The day after this is in Oldham with Arooj Shah. We're going to go and catch some criminals. Let's get some positive PR. It's a game to these people. To these people, our town and the lives of our children and our pursuit for justice is a game. They were forced to do this, and they just come up and just talk absolute bollocks and think they can get away with it. And the one who's talking the most bollocks is this guy who's the chief executive, the new chief executive, or the new leader of Rochdale Council. The new leader of Rochdale Council.
And invested heavily in our services. And we have shared our learning with other councils from across the United Kingdom, including most recently delegations from Northern Ireland and the Isle of Man.
We're that good. We're now that good in Rochdale. We're now that good in Rochdale that our best practice is being shared across the world. How can you spin this? This report forced on them, exposes a catastrophic list of failures. Lamentable, I think, was Andy Burnham's word. Shameful. And this scumbag stands up and starts talking about how good they are.
We have educated schools, taxi drivers, off licences, takeaways, barbers, licensed premises and local residents, and in particular those involved in the nighttime economy, about the signs of child sexual exploitation and what to do about it.
He's educated. He's educated taxi drivers, takeaway workers and whatnot of spotting signs and what to do about it. I'll tell you what you do about it, lads. You don't rape little girls. That's what you do about it. You don't rape little girls. You don't open the top floors of your takeaways out and put mattresses down and then queue up outside to take your turn on little girls. Because that's what the report confirmed. You don't lock up children in cages and throw curry powder at them. You don't. He's congratulating himself. He's congratulating his council. They've done bugger all. They've created this unit that Kate Green talks about later, and I couldn't be bothered with her. I've not even had her in this, by the way. I thought it was completely disgraceful that a woman like her, the police and crime commissioner, of a piece of work that people have been fighting for 10 years, 12 years, to get this far, rocks up wearing a leather jacket. Now, I like a leather jacket, but there's not a chance in hell I would have rocked up to an event like that in a leather jacket. She rocked up wearing a leather jacket. I found it completely inappropriate. So this Muppet is going on about how great they are and how they've delivered all this training.
Rochdale has contributed to several other reviews and helped to strengthen services across the region and the rest of the country.
Okay. I think that's a lie. I think that's an outright lie, because I can't find anywhere where Rochdale has helped to improve services across the rest of the country. And if I lived in Rochdale or was focused on Rochdale, I would be submitting an FOI asking for that information to be validated. I think that's an outright lie.
Our multi-agency Sunrise team, which works to prevent, detect and prosecute child sexual exploitation while supporting those affected, is staffed with dedicated, caring professionals who are committed to the protection of children. In 2021, the Sunrise team won the Public Sector Children's Team Award at the Children and Young People Now Annual Awards. The team has been instrumental.
They've won an award. We in Oldham know all about councils winning awards, don't we? They've won an award. If you wanted to promote a service within your organisation, you would not quantify that or validate that by saying they've won an award. What you would do is would have independent audit and evaluation of your services to see that it is comprehensively meeting all of the outputs and outcomes that it was designed to do, and that children are safer as a consequence of that team. You would bring in an external evaluator. You'd bring in someone from a university perhaps. You'd then have it peer reviewed with service users or survivor groups and specialist third sector organisations, external organisations who have expertise in this to peer review it. That's how you would determine whether your service was up to standard. It wouldn't be we went out on a Saturday night to an award ceremony and had a slap-up meal.
In trying to rebuild public confidence in child protection services in our borough. But please be aware that the team is not complacent and that it is constantly looking for ways to improve and enhance the protection of children. I must say very clearly to everyone, we will be ever vigilant in our efforts to ensure that these awful systemic failures do not happen again and that children will be protected.
Since 2004.
Okay, the other thing he says, and I couldn't play it because it made me too angry to play it, is he wanted to give reassurance that everyone who worked in Rochdale at the time are long gone. You scumbag. We don't want you to give us reassurance that they're long gone. We want them named. And long gone isn't enough. We've paid them off. Or they're working in Wigan, or they're working in Oldham, or they're working somewhere else. We want a full list of every one of these individuals who comprehensively failed, covered up, and as Sarah will now share with you, blamed her and her team. Accused them of being bother causers. Does that sound familiar? Wrote a report where they blamed her and her team. Who are these people? Who is the equivalent of Gerard Jones? Who is the equivalent of Carolyn Wilkins? Name them. Tell us where they are. And they should be pursued. They should have their pensions took off them, and every penny of their pensions should then go into a survivors fund. Every one of these involved in destroying the lives of children should have their pensions took off them, and their pension should go into a pot of money that continues to support the survivors for the rest of their lives. That's what should happen. I'd go further. They should be put in prison. You and I would be put in prison.
All the evidence was given to Greater Manchester Police and Social Care at the time, and it's now being used to support new prosecutions. Even now, whilst they are celebrating successful convictions, Greater Manchester Police failed to acknowledge the role of crisis intervention team played in providing them with corroborative evidence and contemporaneous notes. Everything that is being done now should have been done then. It's not like you're waiting for a new bit of tech to make it possible. All it would have taken is the right people actually giving a damn. After Operation Span, we were told by Pennine Care Foundation Trust, our employers, to draw a line under it. When they knew we had dozens of other cases that needed investigating. We had names, addresses, telephone numbers, and very detailed accounts of serious sexual assaults against children. Alongside Greater Manchester Police, they only spent time and effort questioning our numbers. Well, they weren't numbers, they were real children. We now know from the report that this was a decision made by those organisations not to investigate. Why would they do that? The scale of abuse was known to protective services at the time, and they chose not to take appropriate action. Someone needs to explain why. Shame on those who only recently said we have nothing to learn from this inquiry. We've already reviewed what went wrong. We're so much better now. Shame on you.
That this report was commissioned.
The main point she's making is not only were they ignored, not only were the crimes, all the hard work they put together shut down, she wants to know, rightly she wants to know, who made those decisions and why were those decisions made. Now, I'm very clear on why I think those decisions were made. Those decisions were made because it was politically of benefit to the politicians and the policy officers that ran the town and the police that ran the town. Because those involved in gang raping little girls were powerful men. If they were convicted, it would be at the very least embarrassing and at worst detrimental to the votes that are collected. This had nothing to do with the fear of the far right ever. That is... what's the word I'm looking for? That is... It's a boogeyman, isn't it? It's a boogeyman created by the fake liberal, white metropolitan elite who wanted to keep their cosy jobs and their cosy positions. So they demonized an entire community, or the working class white community, as though the racist and far right, because it wasn't happening to their children. It wasn't happening to their children in Didsbury or Charlton. It was happening to white working class girls. And that's what they did. They created a boogeyman. It had nothing to do with the fear of the far right. It had everything to do with protecting themselves and protecting their positions. And that's what I've been saying from the outset as to why these people were protected. And how can you have a review? We've had 3 reviews now. The Manchester one, the Oldham one, and the Rochdale one. Thank you, Gary. Yeah, red herring. Yeah. How can we have a review when no one asked the question, why was this covered up? When no one lists the people that did cover it up? And there's nothing anywhere to say now what is now being done that's different to make sure this cover-up will never happen again. I keep hearing lessons have been learned, but what are the lessons that have been learned? And if lessons had been learnt, the million-dollar question is that, why is it still going on? If you listen to what Maggie Oliver has to say, she's very clear. If it's still going on, it's just as bad. So what lessons have been learnt? You've learnt clearly the wrong lessons. You've not learnt the lessons that need to be learnt. Yeah.
In 2017, there was nothing shared from Greater Manchester Police or from Rochdale Council until the end of 2021, because they were pushing back and pretending that these things hadn't happened. They didn't want the truth to come out. I don't say very much.
Nothing happened. The review was commissioned in 2017. Nothing happened until 2021. Before the police and the council started thinking, oh my God, we need to start doing something. What changed in 2021? We came along and we took Sean Fielding out. And our approach, nothing but respect for Maggie. I'm not a Maggie Oliver. I'm far more aggressive. And my target was the politicians. I looked around and I thought, where are we going to cause the most damage and force them into a position where they've got to shift? And that's what we did. We politically mobilized the town. And we went at it every day. Every day. For 3 years we've been at it on this. There's not a day that's gone by. Every day we've shown them up, we've embarrassed them, we've humiliated them, we've exposed them. And then we've held them to account at the ballot box. And when they called us far right, what did they get? Bring in hope, not hate. This was my response to them. Because we did not fear them. Far right my arse. The gang rape of little girls. I wasn't too aggressive when they needed to get into power, was I, Gary? So Oldham comes along, is what happened in 2021.
Good about the police, as Mr. Watson knows, but there was a slight change in attitude when you came in that there is communication on perhaps not enough of a level, but it is certainly better than your predecessor. What I would say, though, is that I take great exception with the speech that you've read today. It has been prepared for you by a very powerful organisation, a PR department that kicks in when a report like this is published and pretends that these are failures of the past. This report talks about the past. But what I want to do is to bring it from the past into the present and into the future, because my work in the Maggie Oliver Foundation now means that I have current information about what is going on today. And I would say categorically, and I am sorry, Mr. Watson, but the failures that happened then are still happening now.
The failures that were happening then are still happening now. She's just slapped him. She's just slapped him. And it's brave, because they tried to set her up and pressure her. Maggie Oliver this, Maggie Oliver that, all of them. And she stood up, took offence to the speech that has been prepared for the policeman, and effectively called him a liar. Maggie Oliver has effectively called the Chief Constable a liar. If lessons have been learnt, I don't recognise them, because the failings that were happening then are happening now. That's not me. That's not Raja Miah, the aggressive one. That's Maggie Oliver delivering that in her way.
We have more communication for sure, but we do not have a system that supports victims, that listens to their voices. And when they do challenge the system, unfortunately, the organisation closes ranks. It protects the organisation. Institutional protection and covering up what is really going on is what I'm hearing today. I'm hearing those at the top of these organisations saying that things are now better. Well, we are currently supporting in the foundation over 371 victims today who say they are still being failed by GMP.
How many children? Well, Maggie Oliver's foundation in Greater Manchester are working with 371 children who are saying they are being failed by Greater Manchester Police. Not children who've been abused, because children who've been abused, groomed, gang raped, don't automatically go to Maggie Oliver. They go to the police. And once they're failed, or so they have the courage, and afterwards, then they go to Maggie Oliver. Maggie Oliver isn't the first step. She's the desperate last step. And she's very clear. Again. And it's the first time we've had numbers. Yeah. 371.
And their voices are silenced. What this report doesn't cover is the 10 years since the terms of reference ended. The terms of reference for this report were 2013. We are now in 2024. This is very much about the past. We are now in the present, and I'm seeing what is going on today. Far too often, we have the same things happening. And I listen to all the numbers that you quote, Mr. Watson, and the departments that you talk about. And I have to say that within the last month alone, we have got now an ex-serving Greater Manchester police officer who worked in that very department that you talk about, specialist in child sexual exploitation, and that officer could have been me 12 years ago. She had been banging on doors. She has been desperately trying to get a very serious case where many, many children are being abused taken seriously. She was unable to get anybody to listen. Her complaints have fallen on deaf ears. The resources are not being put into that case. I'm afraid to say that if anybody scratched the surface and really dug deep about what has happened, not just within Greater Manchester Police, throughout the country, about how victims are being silenced, how they do not have a voice, how the police complaint system is unfit for purpose, that's where we need to see change. We need accountability at the top.
What she's saying is not just victims are being failed, they're being ignored, they're being abused, and when victims go and complain about the way they're being treated, the police complaint system covers up for the police officers. So the cover up is covered up. That's what she's saying. The IEOPC, and I've had direct experience of them, and they're a sham of an organisation. They're an absolute sham of an organisation. They're neither independent, and they definitely have no interest in pursuing any complaints. They're a complete sham of an organisation. What we are experiencing through the prism of fighting this is the behaviour of a police force not from a liberal Western democracy, but from that of a tin pot dictatorship. These children are being abused, continue to be abused, continue to be mistreated by those who are meant to protect them. And she's clear. She's clear. Greater Manchester Police came to this press conference, with the Chief Constable and his sheets of paper where he was reading nothing but utter trash. Barefaced lies.
I would like to say today that things are a million times better. But if I went to every one of the victims and survivors who approach the Maggie Oliver Foundation every day to say, are things different? They would tell you, no, they are not. There are still far, far too many victims who are not being heard, who are being criminalised, who are being intimidated, who are being silenced when they dare to raise their head above the parapet. This is a story of thousands of children's lives that have been blighted, and a lack of willingness to listen where these mistakes are happening. I think if you read the report, Gary and Malcolm make it very clear that there has been no accountability for these failures. And that whilst these are institutional failings, behind all these decisions are individuals. These are individual decisions that have prevented resources going into these cases. I don't want.
Even Ridgway and Newsom have got to admit that they can't name people because their terms of reference prevented them from doing so. How can you have a review that talks about failures, and is any of this true, and the scope doesn't include listing the individuals that failed? Burnham owns this, didn't he? He owned it at the beginning. I did this. Well, then if you did this, Andy Burnham, you also set it up in such a way to protect your pals. At Rochdale Council, at Greater Manchester Police, at Oldham Council, at Manchester Council, at the Labour Party. What she's describing, Gary, is a cover-up. What she's describing is a cover-up.
this to be a sorry about what happened in the past. I want it to be a commitment to what is going to change in the future. And I know you say that we are communicating, and we are, and we did meet 2 years ago, and I am extremely grateful to you personally for apologising to those girls, but I haven't heard a word from you in 2 years. And please...
So whilst he's trying to talk about this nice partnership he's got with the Maggie Oliver Foundation, Maggie Oliver responds by saying, "You've not met me in 2 years. We've been trying to meet with you and you've not bothered to meet me in 2 years." Wow.
Mr. Watson, allow some of the survivors of Operation Augusta, Operation Green Jacket, to be interviewed by the assurance review team, because at the moment your legal department is not allowing them to speak to the review team. So that is something.
Greater Manchester Police's legal team have been mobilised during the process of this review. And I'm making sense of what Maggie Oliver's saying. And they've prevented survivors from giving testimony to the review team. I can only interpret that one way. And if I've got it wrong, my apologies, but I can only interpret that one way. They have gone out and either threatened survivors that should they speak up to the review team, they'll be prosecuted, or they've taken out injunctions against survivors. Andy Burnham launches his assurance review, and the police respond by identifying who the survivors are and going and finding the survivors and making sure that they can't speak, or else they'll get punished, arrested, prosecuted, sued. That's what she's just said there. The survivors have been prevented from speaking to the review team. By the police.
Which they need to hear in order to assess properly where we go in the future. Gary and Malcolm, you have my eternal gratitude and the greatest respect. And I know you got a lot of criticism about the Oldham Review. I know that. And what I would say is that it's because there was nobody working in Oldham who knew what was going on. Operation Augusta and Operation Span reviews are honest, they are thorough, they are the truth. And the reason they are truthful is because I knew the inside story. I worked on these cases. I shared that truth with you, and you took it and you wrote reports. Sadly, in Oldham, that didn't happen. All the victims.
Honest, thorough and true. The reviews in Rochdale and the reviews in Manchester. Honest, thorough and true. Sadly in Oldham, that didn't happen. So what's the opposite of honest? Deceitful? Lies? What's the opposite of thorough? Vague? Limited? Limited. And what's the opposite of true? False. That's what she's just said about the Oldham review. Because she used those three adjectives to describe the other reviews and said in Oldham that those things didn't happen. So you can see quite clearly Maggie Oliver now at the press conference with Andy Burnham Kate Green, the police commissioner, the chief constable there, all of them sat in front of her, has called out the Oldham review as at best limited and at worst outright lies. And she says why.
In Oldham were forbidden to speak to the review team, apart from one. And the reason that one girl spoke to the review team is because she came to me and she said,
just give me a second. There you go.
They are thorough. They are the truth. And the reason they are truthful is because I knew the inside story. I worked on these cases. I shared that truth with you and you took it and you wrote reports. Sadly, in Oldham, that didn't happen. All the victims in Oldham were forbidden to speak to the review team, apart from one. And the reason that one girl spoke to the review team is because she came to me and she said, I want to speak to that team. So the report was very limited because the truth wasn't in there, because you were prevented from hearing that truth.
The Oldham report was very limited. The truth wasn't in there and you were prevented from hearing that truth. Those are the words of Maggie Oliver in reference to the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of working-class white girls in Oldham, and that is her analysis, her conclusion on Andy Burnham's assurance review in Oldham. I'll be back. What I telling you? No, seriously. Do you see? Maggie Oliver has just outed the review in Oldham as false, as a lie, as deceitful, as a cover-up. She has just outed the review in Oldham as a cover-up. She's protecting Ridgway Newsom, who she's saying it's a cover-up not because of your fault, but because you were prevented. So who prevented Newsom and Ridgway from getting to the truth? One, the terms of reference. The terms of reference were set by Sean Fielding. Two, Andy Burnham, who accepted those terms of reference. He could have said no. Three, by Arood Shah while she was leader of the council, when a lot of this investigation took place. And 4 by Amanda Chaddison when she then became leader when these findings were announced. Fielding Shah and Amanda Chaddison neck deep in it. All the council officers involved neck deep in it. You didn't have to read the 173-page report, big team. All you had to do was listen to the press conference and to this brave woman who stood up in a press conference to do with Rochdale, defended the people of this town who have risked imprisonment for refusing to be silenced over the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of their town's children. What should have happened immediately was a coordinated response from all of the opposition parties, once again demanding a statement from Arud Shah, from Harry Caffrell, as a consequence of the damning statement by Maggie Oliver in reference to the Oldham review that she herself effectively has described as a cover-up. And all 3 of them were involved in the cover-up, Gary, because the samosa nibbler is the one who they are protecting. It is James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon who is neck deep in the scandal. Andy Burnham accepted the limited review terms of reference because it's his mate McMahon in the Labour Party. All of this in Manchester, in Rochdale, in Oldham, at the heart of it is the Labour Party. It's got bugger all to do with me as a Muslim or some white working class girl because apparently she's not loved in the way she needs to be loved. All of that is red herring bullshit. This is systematic child abuse, grooming and gang rape on an industrial scale. And they were protected because of the Labour Party. This is about politicians and power. As the gang rape or the abuse of little girls or little boys has always been. Politicians and power. Or politicians, police, press, the powerful people and yeah? And yes, that was indeed a samosa. I had a, like an urge to have a celebratory sort of samosa. I shouldn't be celebrating it, I get it. But you've got to understand where I'm coming from. I've said it was a cover-up from the beginning. I've said the report was a cover-up. I've been at it all the time. I've shown you time after time after time what it's a cover-up. And now Maggie Oliver is confirming it's a cover-up. So where is the coordinated response? Where is the big team? Where are the Lib Dems, the official opposition? I saw Lewis Quigg put something out, and well done to him. Let's finish this off. There's a little bit left.
I was trying to create a different culture in Greater Manchester on this issue. We're not where we need to be. Most of the speakers have said this review, the whole process, has taken longer and has been harder than it should have been. In paragraph 1.16, The report says that 10 individuals were invited for an interview to support the work of the review, and Maggie referenced this. 2 sent a written response and 8 did not reply. Paragraph 1.17 records that 5 former GMP officers were asked to give an interview but didn't reply. Simply ignoring a request to comply with a review of this kind is just not good enough. It's not good enough for the reasons that I think Sarah gave. So today I will be writing to the Home Secretary to share our experiences in conducting this review and to suggest some important changes we believe are needed. I am sure the Home Secretary would agree with me that mayors and police and crime commissioners should be supported to carry out reviews of this kind, difficult as they are. But it should be easier for people to do what we are doing. And I think this is particularly important given that the National Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse has concluded. Who does carry forward the work? Who ensures that the spotlight Maggie spoke about is shone continually and that therefore is accountability? If we are to have that, it's essential that new powers must be introduced. Firstly, I believe reviews commissioned by mayors or police and crime commissioners should be given a formal status and the powers to require public servants, whether in post, retired or moved to another organisation, to give evidence. There should be a way that they can be properly and fairly held to account, even if they have left public service or required. Secondly, as Malcolm pointed out, changes in the law are needed in respect of data sharing between organisations. If we are to get the open learning culture we need, it must be made possible to share information more swiftly between statutory agencies and formal review teams. And I am staggered by how many obstacles this issue has presented in this review. There is now, in my view, an overwhelming and unanswerable case for a full duty of candour on all public servants, requiring them to be truthful and cooperative with inquiries of this kind.
Gary and Malcolm, you have my eternal gratitude and the greatest respect. And I know you got a lot of criticism about the Oldham Review. I know that. And what I would say is that it's because there was nobody working in Oldham who knew what was going on. Operation Augusta and Operation Span reviews are honest, they are thorough, they are the truth. And the reason they are truthful is because I knew the inside story. I worked on these cases. I shared that truth with you, and you took it and you wrote reports. Sadly, in Oldham, that didn't happen. All the victims in Oldham were forbidden to speak to the review team, apart from one. And the reason that one girl spoke to the review team is because she came to me and she said, I want to speak to that team. So the report was very limited because the truth wasn't in there, because you were prevented from hearing that truth.
What Andy Burnham describes, what he needs, is exactly what a public inquiry would have given him. So he spent 6.5 years before he's sharing his frustrations, saying he's been prevented from getting to the truth. Andy Burnham is not an idiot. Andy Burnham knew at the time that an assurance review, even the terminology assurance review, well, it's not provided any assurance, has it? And it's been incapable of reviewing what it needed to review. So the assurance review has failed to provide any assurance, and is incapable of reviewing what it needed to review. And he now wants more powers. And what he actually wants are the powers of a public inquiry. He knew this at the beginning. I'd wager my last penny he knew that those who are incriminated would not voluntarily come and give testimony. That's why we have public inquiries, because they've been compelled, they're forced to come and do it. He knew from the beginning that data would be hidden. If I'm reliant on the council to provide me the data, the police to provide me the data, when they were instrumental in the cover-up in the first place, are they going to be providing me the data? Are they a bugger? Andy Burnham knew this right at the beginning, and what he should have done right at the beginning, if he was being genuine and not involved in the cover-up himself, what he should have done is one of two things. The easy option for him would have been, because he has the power to do it, was to launch a Telford-style inquiry. A judge-led Telford-style inquiry. He could have done that. He has the power to do that himself. What he should have done, knowing the scale of what's gone on, the public outcry, come on, why did the BBC do a drama series on it? That tells its own story of how and why it's in the public interest. And he's clear himself, he reacted and responded to the consequence of the BBC drama. The Free Girls. And then the Betrayed Girls. He should have gone off the back of that public outcry to the government and said, because the BBC didn't just put it on BBC Northwest, this went out across the world. He should have gone to the government and said, come on, we need a public inquiry into this. And if he'd done that, I would be delivering leaflets for him for the election in May. But he didn't do that. And 6 years later, he's saying, oh, we've not been able to get to the truth. And we need more powers. Yeah, indeed, Gary. And I agree. He's neck deep. So where does that leave us? Where did that leave us? I woke up with this on my mind, Debbie. And I was reminded of one of the first lessons I was taught when I was an advisor in government. When I was an advisor in government, I was learning as much as I was providing advice. I was learning more, actually. And I was told by a senior civil servant, when I was struggling getting somewhere with a department, they pulled me aside, gave me a coffee and a biscuit, and the chat went like this: Raja, from the outside you think we're all rowing in the same direction, helping each other. We're not. There are factions within, and this was the Home Office at the time, there are factions within the Home Office that are working counter to each other, and there were departments in government that were working counter to each other. And I think it's the same with the BBC. There are factions within the BBC who want all of this covered up, and I'll show you why, and I'll show you an example. Sorry. So this goes out on a Monday. Look what the BBC put out on the Tuesday. They put out an article about Eleanor Williams and how she made it all up. And of course she made it all up and whatnot. And she was proven in court to be a fantasist. But why put that out the day after a fight, a 12-year fight, that shows systematic grooming, gang rape and industrial scale cover-up in Rochdale? Why would the BBC then release this hours after? And not satisfied with the BBC doing it, the Oldham Times, that are now just printed once a week, are writing about a red light district in Oldham. And women and drugs. It's worse than a deflection. It's a counter argument. It's not a deflection. What they're saying is, look, the liars. Look, these are prostitutes. Why on earth would the Oldham Times, why on earth would the Oldham Times, in its print edition once a week on the Thursday, Maggie Olive on the Monday, stands up and says the review in Oldham was a lie, was a cover-up? The Oldham Times on the Thursday runs with a front page headline, and I saw it at the petrol station. I'm not buying that, but I glanced to the right and saw it. Of look at these Muslim kids who go to Westwood School or whatever it is, Westwood High, having to walk past condoms and whatnot, and these, you know, the photograph basically, what are these white prostitutes? They need to counter and reinforce that prejudice. The girls weren't prostitutes, the girls were children. And as for the BBC with the Eleanor Williams story, you could have run that at any time. Why run it the day, hours after Maggie Oliver stands up and says nothing has changed? And Andy Burnham admits he didn't have the powers to do what needed to be done. So where do we go now? It's clear, isn't it? We've got the evidence. We've now got the evidence to prove it was a cover-up in Oldham. And we go back to the council chamber, and I'll lobby the councillors I can who will work with me in putting together something fit for purpose. Not some bullshit, bogus, too clever for myself, but really I'm not at all intelligent, so I don't know what I'm doing, so I'll fuck it up. Sorry, I'm swearing. So I'm going to pick up the phone and speak to the councillors who will speak to me. And see if we can put together a motion, because there's actually only one council meeting left, and it's in March. The one this week is a statutory meeting. Nothing's going to happen at it. It's to do with boundary changes. The one after that is single item to do with the budget. So there's only one council meeting left with motions, and that's the one before the election in March. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. So if I come back here next week or the week after, and I've done a deal with the Lib Dems or the Conservatives or the Fails of Independence or whoever, no, I've done it not because of my ego. I've done it because it's the only way we're going to move this town forward. I don't gain anything from it. The next thing is we call for, and this is where they're going to go running. The council officers are going to go running. The councillors in charge of this town are going to go running. Running away, that is. If Maggie Hurley has confirmed it's a cover-up, we want the review in Oldham investigating. We want Gerard Jones, Emma Barton, Elizabeth Drogan, Harry Caffrell, Arood Shah, Amanda Chadderton, Sean Fielding, all of them. We want all of them investigated independently by an external investigation. We want a judge-led inquiry into the conduct of our elected leaders. So when you bring in a Telford-style investigation, we don't bring in a Telford-style investigation to review whether or not the grooming and gang rape took place. We bring in an investigation to investigate the cover-up. And that investigation will be forced to investigate the conduct of the police officers, the council officers, and the politicians. And the only way we get that over the line is by taking Labour out into a minority and bent whistle. Absolutely. Front and centre, Gary. Yes. So it's a judge-led inquiry into the cover-up and the demonising of the people of this town who fought against tyranny. And to get to that, we need to take Labour out, and they're at 33 now. And don't worry about AFTAB going there, because AFTAB going there is brilliant news. It shows how desperate they are. And I'll pick up on all of that next week. Yeah. Carolyn Wilkins. All of them. Rebecca Sutcliffe. Boobgate. I in particular want, what was his name? Bogotoff. The one who wanted to get an injunction against me. But to do that, oh yeah. Wait until we see the leaflets we'll have on him. A waste of money, he called it. Justice for children groomed and gang raped by Labour Party supporting rape gangs is a waste of money. There's a full report to analyse and share with you. It is Rochdale focused, so I'll do that as a one-off in some way. Yeah. The Oldham Times, Nick. The Oldham Times. We want an inquiry into the cover-up. Yes, we want a public inquiry into the gang rape of our children, but we want a specific inquiry, a judge-led one, into the actions of the councils and its partners once it was made aware of the Jim McMahon emails. The last 3 years. And I'll go to the Conservatives, I'll go to the Lib Dems. I'll say to them, you know, this is coming, it's unavoidable. Will you support it? Because if you do support it, where I can, I will help you get over the line. We will mobilise our communities and help you get over the line. I'll go to Cameron Gaffer and his team. Whether the Conservatives are kicked out is still, I don't know, in Hollywood, because the truth is, we're not going to do this without the support of the Pakistani community and the Bangladeshi community. We're not going to do it without the entire town coming together. To every one of my Pakistani friends and my Bangladeshi friends, I say the same thing. It's in our interest. It's in our interest to have this addressed. Because the vast majority is the wrong term, no one I know from the Pakistani community endorses the gang rape of children. No one I know from the Bangladeshi community endorses the gang rape of children. 100% Debbie Abrahams and Jim McMahon. Remember that joint letter they signed? And the adjournment debate in Parliament. We want an inquiry, a judge-led inquiry, into the actions of the council and its partners and the politicians that run this town, in what now Maggie Oliver has confirmed as a cover-up. I told you. I'm not here about hope. I'm here to deliver justice.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011, he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.